Thank you, Amy and Emma, for joining me today. It's great to be able to just take some time to hear about your experiences and share it with other students, particularly students in the law school. So, Emma, do you want to just introduce yourself, sort of say who you are, where you're from, what your placement is?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Emma Hooper. I just studied a straight law degree and I did my placement year at Oracle, which is a tech company and they're based in Reading. I was their legal intern in their commercial legal team, covering like all their UK customers.
And Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Schumacher. I'm a business services trainee in the Office of General Counsel at Latham and Watkins, which is an international but US-based global law firm.
So, Emma, could you give us a quick summary of what your responsibilities are in your role?
Yes, so my main responsibility was managing the insolvency process for all of Oracle's UK customers. So I would sort of just draft letters, draft emails, contacting administrators, liquidators. I would also provide summaries to the legal counsel for any like sales and customer requests that they thought I could sort of handle, sort of the more simpler stuff that didn't necessarily need too much like legal qualification for. I also just worked on a few projects which sort of focused around making the legal team's functions more efficient and like striving for like business continuity. That was their main sort of aim, as well as some sort of company secretary administrative responsibilities as well.
And Amy?
Yeah, so I worked in the Office of General Counsel, which is basically like the compliance of the firm. So in a law firm, there's like two sides. You have the staffing side as well as the fee earning side. So the fee earning side is where like the lawyers work and they work for clients and bring money in, but the staff like support the lawyers. So in compliance, you're basically ensuring the law firm follows the law itself. So I kind of did a lot of work on travel compliance, so changes following COVID and Brexit and EU legislation. So advising travellers, maintaining lists of people that we have that have insider information on matters, organising meetings. I was in charge of interviewing and training the new placement students, organising like firm events with the other placement students, managing secondments, basically assisting kind of the legal side of the lawyers' work.
Can you think back to over a year or so ago? And I'm interested in, why did you want to do a placement?
So my main experience that I had before I did my placement was just sort of bartending and waitressing. And while you can still get like really transferable skills from that sort of experience, and I would still draw on those skills sort of after I've done my placement as well. But I just wanted like a more solid legal experience in like a much more legal environment. And the process was tricky to sort of balance with uni work, because obviously you want to put time into your applications, especially when sort of recruitment processes, they sort of pick up around the same time of year, sort of like early, like January, February is when a lot of placements will start sort of contacting people. But I got really good advice from the start of my placement from the careers and placements department, and they just supported like any queries that I had sort of throughout the process as well.
I would echo what Emma said in the sense that I wanted kind of solid legal work experience, but also that I knew how competitive getting a training contract was and that it's quite unique to do it, to do a placement in law. So I just wanted to kind of stand out a little bit more. And also want to be more employable, so get those skills that you get in a business context and have the opportunity to network for a year. I basically needed a year to kind of get my head together and like decide what I really wanted to do because I wasn't ready to graduate, and it really has done that. I found the process quite busy. As Emma said, it is challenging. It's a lot to manage, but it's doable, and 100% the careers and placement team were phenomenal throughout. I could not have done it without them, and it's such a good opportunity to do it at York when you have that sort of support. So it's a difficult process and it is busy, but it gives you these skills that are transferable and perfect for when you want to do a training contract. It's exactly the same recruitment process.
And would either of you do anything differently
I think I would definitely take more time to research companies that I was sort of less familiar with and maybe less interested in generally, because obviously you don't want to spread yourself too thin. I think I did do that sometimes if I was sort of less interested in what a company did sort of as their baseline business. It's definitely worth still applying because you want to sort of apply to as many as you can to sort of raise your chances of getting one. But you don't want to end up sort of wasting your time writing loads of applications that just aren't really very well researched or very good. I would definitely recommend just like taking proper time out to look at stuff that you don't particularly know about. And also that there are less legal placements generally compared to sort of like more business focused ones or HR, things like that. So I would definitely get, as a law student can get you. So definitely considering other roles that aren't necessarily legal, that still would be like a great experience to have at the end of the day. And sort of commercial awareness and business awareness is something that's really important for law students to have. So if you are working in a big company for a year, then it's just as valuable as like a purely legal sort of work experience placement.
I would definitely agree with that, and I would say start applying earlier because the legal placements go so quickly, and also some of them are recruit on a rolling basis. So once they get a certain number of applications, or if they like someone early on, they'll just close the application, and so you kind of miss out that way. So I would get onto it a little bit earlier because I started quite late. But then saying that, the Latham application process was really late, so it kind of worked out in that way. I also would have been a bit more bold. Like, I think it's a good idea to like reach out to people who are currently doing a placement in the role you're applying to, and the company and the graduate recruitment team, and learn more like specifics about the role that you're going to go into, because it really makes you stand out. It's quite competitive, but being driven and taking that first step, I think, looks really good on you. So yeah, I would have definitely done more of that.
So I'm interested in your placement experience. You both, well, Emma, you've finished yours, so you've done your year, and Amy, you're due to finish shortly. So you can reflect back now, having been there pretty much a year. So Emma, what have you found challenging, particularly enjoyable? Has anything surprised you?
So I worked virtually for 9 months. The offices at Oracle, they wanted to all open at the same time, which ended up not really being very practical, considering like every country has a different sort of COVID restriction rule. So sometimes it was really tricky to sort of stay motivated while working at home, especially when it was a bit of a quiet day or there wasn't too many calls on. But Oracle as a company has the sort of own way of doing things, so getting to grips with that was quite tricky to start off with, like learning all the processes without sort of being there to see it actually happen in person. That I found that quite challenging, but I think to balance it out, there was just so much work that I could get involved in, not just being sat in the legal department all the time. I was able to sort of just jump on calls with sales instead of having to like walk all the way upstairs to the sales teams, working with procurement, operations, HR. I was just sort of spread across the business pretty easily because you could just hop on a Zoom. So that was definitely like that balanced out the sort of negative of like lack of motivation, and I was also able to interact with other legal teams as well, so corporate and employment, legal operations as well, because again it was just so much easier to contact them. It was so much more sort of acceptable to just email somebody and set up a call rather than having to maybe like ring up their phone or something or go find them in the office. So yeah, I think that those were sort of the main challenges that I faced.
I would say, so I had a very different experience. I was in the office from about 2 or 3 weeks into the placement. So I found that very difficult, kind of adjusting to that 9 to 5, being in the office for 9 and knowing what to talk to people about. It sounds so silly, but it's a professional environment and you have to say certain things, and you can't, you know, you can choose to disclose whatever information about yourself, but you also want to maintain a professional side. And I found that adjustment quite different because I wasn't used to it. So yeah, adjusting to the 9 to 5 commuting, yeah, the professionalism side, it was something I'd never experienced. So it was challenging, but it was also very enjoyable. And I loved having the ability to kind of create my own professional style and writing emails in certain ways and approaching different people. So it was a challenge, but it's a natural challenge that everyone would kind of face when they go into a workplace.
Great. And what do you feel you've gained, Amy, from doing the year at Latham & Watkins?
I would say the number one thing is confidence. Like being in a professional setting, I just know how to apply my skills from university in a practical context. And I would just say I have the confidence just to go up to people and speak to them about what they do and say hello and say good morning and like contact a recruitment team. And I just have so much more confidence and the feedback is so valuable. I would just say, yeah, it's the best thing I ever did. I'm so happy I did it. And I feel so much more employable as well. Like I can just go to any situation and I can approach it, because it was so daunting to start with, but then to come out the other end is so rewarding.
Yeah, I would just second that. Like the confidence is just crazy. Like how if you look at yourself from before your placement and then after, you get so much more like responsibility put on you than you think you would, because you're normally a lot younger as well. So like the impact that you're able to make is just like something that you couldn't really predict. So yeah, definitely just second that. By the end, you've come so far, and looking back, you just can't believe how much more capable you are of just doing all the little professional things.
Have you been able to identify any useful links between your law degree and your placements, Emma?
Yeah, so the way that the York Law course is obviously set out is like problem-based learning, and it sounds quite cringy, but it genuinely did really help me, especially when I was sort of given like complicated things to deal with or like a complicated issue. Being able to just break down what the problem is and separate out like what question do I need to answer basically at the end, like in the email that you're drafting or the letter that you're writing or the research that you need to do, like what is that one question or multiple questions that you need to answer, and how can you tailor that to sort of the audience that you're talking to or working with. That was definitely something that I found was really, really transferable, and just being able to generally handle large volumes of information and break it down.
And Amy?
I was going to say exactly that. Like problem-based learning has been so useful, and also the legal skills module, the professionalism and ethics. You kind of know how to speak to a client in that sense. You see sort of emails between clients and how to approach a challenge. So that really did help. And I would also say the research techniques. So I used a lot of my research techniques of using Westlaw and LexisNexis in a practical context. It was just taking it that step further and making sure that it was completely brief. It's a bit more brief in a practical setting, but definitely like the foundations from the unique law degree at York was, yeah, I'd never predicted it would have such an impact.
And I'm interested, so you've both used obviously your legal skills, and you've worked in legal teams, and Amy, you've worked in a law firm itself, and Emma, you are working in a legal team within a large corporate commercial organization. Emma, any reflections on that? So working that sort of in-house legal team as opposed to a law firm?
Yeah, so working in-house is a really interesting dynamic, because your client is the company that you work for, and like the sales reps that you work with, they're technically your clients. You do have your customers, but the main sort of interaction that you have isn't customer facing. It's not as client facing as it would be in a law firm. So there's a lot more overlap, I think, with the sort of commercial advice that's given and the legal advice that's given. Often it was quite difficult to sort of draw a line between that, where like people in my team would perhaps give a bit too much commercial advice to sales reps that were maybe a bit more new, and they didn't really understand sort of the baseline of what they needed to know. So there would be a lot more just commercial awareness training, I suppose, for the sales reps. And in terms of the career side of things, it's much more secure, because the work's always going to be there for that company. They're always going to need a legal team, so there's not as much sort of going out for business development. You don't need to sort of win clients or anything like that, so the work is always there, but it can be very sort of narrow and specialized, which, depending on what you want to do, it could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. You can definitely see a trend that people will go into private practice and then go back to in-house, just because it's more secure and you can fit it more easily, the hours are easier. That being said, in-house at Oracle specifically, you would work very, very hard sort of towards the end of a quarter. So when all the financial results would be really important, so there'd be lots and lots of deals being pushed through. So that would be quite similar to a normal law firm, where you would be sort of completing deals on a transactional basis all the time and working quite late hours. And that would also happen sort of at Oracle, but you don't get the sort of pay benefit, I suppose. There's sort of a balance that's sort of had, you can be really secure in your job, but you don't really get paid for like the specific minutes that you do.
That's really interesting insight, thank you. Amy, any reflections on your part?
Yeah, so I would kind of echo what Emma said in the sense that I'm working kind of in-house in a law firm. So I'm sort of seeing both sides to it. So the in-house lawyers work incredibly hard and their client is the firm, but then the fee earners work incredibly hard as well. And it's the training contract there is like a 2-year interview. It's fast paced, it's intense. You're kind of accountable to both the firm and the client. So I would say the work is slightly different and quite broad. You have to be, as Emma says, in-house is quite narrow. You can kind of expect what you're going to do day to day, whereas when you're on a fee earning side, it's a bit more broad and you can be put on anything. But yeah, I would just say it's about what you prefer and what you kind of thrive in, because that fee earner side, you're accountable to a client and you put the client first, and you also have to think about the business, but the client and the client paying you is the initial thing. Whereas when you're working in-house, you think more holistically about what's going to benefit your business and the correct legal procedures to benefit the business, as well as to like follow the law.
So thinking about students who may be in their first year or heading into the second year or currently in their second year, what would you have liked to have known about placements or the process when you were in first and second year that you would like to share now with your fellow students? Emma?
I think in first year, I would have found it a bit more useful to know that it was definitely an option. I don't know whether that was just sort of my own research, so like not knowing the placement year program was sort of as accessible as it is. I definitely would have liked to know that, because I think it would have sort of helped me prepare a bit more for the year of applications and sort of do a bit more research into how placement students are recruited. I was worried generally about not really being considered like a good applicant because I didn't have as much like industry experience. But it's definitely good to know that you can just have so many transferable skills from your course and from work experience that you've done before uni. So whether that's working in like a shop or a bar or a restaurant or tutoring, anything like that. So my appointment with Careers and Placements was really helpful to sort of, as a starting point, to like pick out all of those skills. So I definitely recommend doing that. I was also a bit worried about not having enough time to do vacation scheme applications, and feeling like I had to sort of choose, because I feel like there's quite a lot of pressure on second years to start, sort of give it a go, like try and get a vacation scheme in second year. But it's just sort of prioritizing to you what is more important at that time. So for me, it was the placement year applications. I would definitely prioritize those, but it just depends on what you think is sort of the best thing for you. And again, just like taking the time to research companies. I mentioned this earlier on, but just be sort of, don't copy and paste, like be selective about the information that you include in your application based on that company and based on the skills that you would be able to apply to that role. There are some things that you can transfer across, but you just don't want to waste your time at the end of the day, because it is quite a busy year. So yeah, definitely just taking the time to research and apply in a sort of good, comprehensive way as well.
So I would say I would have like to have known how early they come out, and maybe I did know, but I didn't want to kind of start yet because I didn't want to fully commit to the year. But they come out early, and then I should have looked more into whether applications were on a rolling basis or whether they had a strict deadline. Because if they're on a rolling basis, it's important to get your application in as early as possible. Whereas if there's a strict deadline, you can kind of schedule things a bit better, and you could literally apply the night before and you still have the same chance as someone else. Also, the structure of answers, like, it just seems to be the golden code to sort of talk about the company and then to talk about how your experience links to that, and then link it back to why you would be good in that role, and make sure you're using words from the job application. It probably was hammered into me, but it took me a while to kind of really realise. And once you do that, it becomes a lot easier. So yeah, as Emma said, like, taking the time, because it really is worth it. When it's tailored to the company, I do think it gets their attention a lot more. I'd say the challenge and worry I sort of faced was that I was going to commit to a year and that I was not going to get a placement, and that I was going to have to go back to uni and not have a house, and my plan and I would have failed essentially in my head, which is certainly not true, because I know some people that started a placement and it wasn't for them and they left. And they went back to York, they got a house, and they had a fantastic year, and they've now graduated. So I think I wish I'd had the confidence to be like, that is an option and it is okay not to get a placement, and taken that pressure off myself a bit more, because it's a fantastic experience, but then it's not the be all and end all.
Oh, they're really good reflections, thank you. So just to end, anything that stands out to you about your placement that you think that was amazing, I'm so glad I did it, or this is what I've got from it, something that you are going to go away with, a big takeaway from this year, and it might be the recruitment process or it might be the placement year itself, but what will you take away? What's going to stand out in your mind when you look back on your experience of the placement year program? Emma?
I think, again, just to sort of reiterate, you're so much more capable of like what you think you are once you start sort of listing out your competencies to do your application or an interview. When you start drawing out all of the experience that you have got, you have so much to offer to these big companies or small companies, to these people who are really, really experienced in their career. You've got so much sort of perspective and like just different experience to offer to them, and you can really sort of transform their perspective or the way that they do things. If you have an idea, like, run with it. I think for me, it's just knowing that is something that you can do, and the worst that people can say is no. Like, at the end of the day, they're not gonna sort of fire you or anything if you have a crazy idea. That they're there to support you, and if they're not, then they're just not sort of a very professional good person. You should just look for it elsewhere. I think, yeah, for me it's definitely just knowing that you're capable of doing so much more than you thought, and so don't second guess, just go for it.
Amy, what's your takeaway from your experience of the placement year program?
I would definitely agree with Emma. The kind of confidence, and you sort of just transform as a person. You really get into who you are. Like, it's okay to be yourself and be open and honest, and people will like you for that. So kind of just accepting that and taking what you learn at uni and just advancing it so quickly in a year has just been unbelievable. And you see yourself grow, and the responsibility and trust other people have in yourself gives you that responsibility. Like, you feel like you trust yourself a lot more because all these people can trust you and think that your work product is amazing. So yeah, I would just say, if you have the opportunity, just definitely do it. Like, some of the responsibility I was given, I would never have even imagined, and I've had so many reflections on my personal growth, but also where I want to go in the future, and it's given me a lot more motivation. Like, I'm excited to work, and yeah, I just think it's really valuable, that growth and that confidence. Yeah, you can do whatever you put your mind to, and yeah, I think you need to remember that, and it's a huge takeaway of the placement. Yeah.
Thank you both. That's really great to hear. One final question, and I'm putting you on the spot here. What next for you both? Any ideas on what's your next steps?
I think I'm still really interested in going into private practice, even after having like a year in-house. Some people say that once you get like the in-house fever, you never want to leave. So experiencing it at this point in my career, I think has been really valuable for me to sort of know that it's not necessarily right for me right now, because I don't want to sort of narrow down that specialism just yet, which is just another reason why I can sort of go fully and just go for sort of private practice. So this year I'll just be doing like vacation scheme training contract applications again, and seeing what happens. But another thing that I've found really valuable from working at Oracle is exploring different career paths as well, not just legal, because it is so competitive. There is just still so much more out there. So for example, I was thinking of looking into, they have a sales graduate program. So if the legal side of things doesn't work out, that's still an option for me to apply for that and try and go for that. So it's entirely different, but also very similar, because you're sort of like working with customers in the same way that lawyers would work with clients. So it's just, you know, I've just been aware and being open-minded of the skills that I have, that I can just apply it to sort of wherever. Just feel equipped to sort of apply to lots of various different things and just see where it takes me, not have too many expectations.
Very similar to Emma, working at Latham has just solidified my ambition to work in a commercial law firm as a commercial solicitor, which I didn't think I would have the skills to do, but being here I've really recognised that it's, you know, an environment I've thrived in and what I want to do. So I've been applying to training contracts throughout this year, and I'll continue to apply to them next year, hopefully getting one. But as Emma said, like, one thing I have learned is that you don't have to become a lawyer if you do a law degree, and you don't have to do it the exact way that everyone else does it. Like, speaking to lots of partners and trainees, they've often done other jobs and other degrees before they've even come into law. So I kind of have accepted that even if I don't get a training contract, there's so many other things I would do, and I'd probably come back to compliance and do some more qualifying law experience in compliance. But yeah, I'm keeping my options open like Emma. But yeah, the final aim is in a commercial law firm, hopefully.
Lovely. Thank you both for your time. That's really helpful. I'm sure our students at York will find that really useful to hear.